The wind carried more than dust that morning. It carried sound brittle and strange, like a cry caught between sleep and death. In the far outskirts of Willow Creek, where the prairie curled into itself and houses lean from years of hard living, a girl lay tied to the rafters of a locked shed. Lou hadn't spoken aloud in 2 days. Her lips cracked from thirst, wrists raw from struggling. The ropes bit deeper when she moved, but still she shifted, if only to feel that she still could. The wooden floor beneath her was splintered and dry, and the air held that sour scent of mold and manure. Her breath came shallow. Her belly, round now and firm, shifted slightly as the child inside her rolled. She closed her eyes and imagined a door swinging open, wide and forgiving, a face kind enough not to flinch at hers. But the only footsteps that came were those of her stepmother, and they never came softly. Delilah's voice always struck like flint. "You shameful thing," she spat the last time she'd opened the door, only to swing the back of her hand across May's cheek. "First you open your legs like a tavern curtain, then you cry like you deserve pity?" May had tried to speak, to explain, once, that she hadn't meant for it to happen, that the man had whispered things that felt like promises, but Delilah never listened. Words weren't welcome in that house, unless they came from Delilah's own throat. Her father had once held her gently. That was before the fever took his strength, and the debt took his spine. Now he passed the shed without looking, the clink of his bottle louder than any thought he might have had. May breathed through her nose, slow and steady. Somewhere, a bird called 3 notes, sweet and bright. She pictured its wings slicing the sky and ached for that kind of freedom. Then the call came again, no bird this time. Hoofbeats. The sound was distant but sure, a horse riding the ridge trail, cutting through early light. She strained toward it, heart pounding. But the angle of the shed gave no view beyond cracks in the wall. She whispered something, not a name, not a word, just the low hum of hope, and listened. Wade McAllister had been riding since dawn. The horse was old, his coat the color of creek rock, and the saddle creaked with every mile. Wade wasn't headed anywhere in particular, just away, from town, from people, from the weight of a past that clung like tobacco smoke. His eyes were the color of dust after rain, and his silence had a gravity to it. Men didn't ask him questions. Women no longer tried. He passed the weather-beaten house without a glance at first, but then the sound stopped him. Faint, like a whimper muffled in wool. He reined in his horse and turned his head. The barn looked abandoned, the main house quiet but upright. A woman stood at the porch, arms folded, mouth drawn into a single harsh line. He tipped his hat out of habit. She didn't return it. "You lost," she barked. "Just passing," Wade said. "You won't find anything here." "I'm not looking." She squinted. "Then move along." He nodded once and clicked his tongue. The horse walked on. But as soon as he passed the bend, he dismounted and circled back on foot. The sound had returned, barely audible, like cloth tearing softly. He crouched near the side of the shed, pressing his ear to the boards. There, breathing, ragged and wet, and the faintest sound of rope creaking. He waited. His hand hovered near the latch, but he didn't try it. Not yet. There was something sacred in a person's suffering. You didn't barge in. You waited to be let close. Inside, May had stopped breathing altogether. She heard something just outside, a presence held in silence. Not Delilah. Too quiet. Too still. Her fingers curled. She summoned her voice, or what remained of it. Help. Wade stepped back. The word had come like a ghost, torn and breathless, but it was enough. That night, the sky turned pewter and low thunder trembled at the edges of the world. Wade returned under cover of dusk, his hat pulled low, and his boots wrapped in cloth to silence their sound. He moved like someone who'd broken into places before, not out of malice, but out of mercy. He circled the house, avoiding the windows, and came to the shed. This time, he didn't hesitate. He slid his knife into the padlock until it gave with a soft pop. The door creaked open. She looked smaller than he expected. Pale as candle wax, with long dark hair stuck to her cheek. Her wrists were bound above her head, her face swollen on one side. But her eyes, wide, tired, watchful, met his. He stepped inside, crouched low. Didn't reach for her. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, voice low, like he was telling the fire not to die. "Name's Wade. I heard you earlier." She blinked. The air between them held. "I'll be back," he whispered. "I'll bring a blade. Food. Something for your wrists." She nodded once, barely. And then he was gone again, swallowed by dark. But for the first time in days, May Lou let herself cry. not in fear or pain, but in the smallest flicker of belief that maybe someone, somewhere, had seen her, and that maybe he'd come back. Wade came back before dawn, moving through the grass like a shadow that knew how to listen. In one hand, he held a rusted hacksaw and a loaf of bread wrapped in a red kerchief. In the other, a folded blanket, worn soft by years of dust and trail sleep. The stars were still blinking when he opened the shed door again. Mei Lu hadn't slept, but her head sagged forward from exhaustion. At the sound of the hinges, her eyes fluttered open. She didn't flinch this time. He crouched beside her and held the saw up, silent question in his eyes. She nodded, slow and steady. With delicate care, he began sawing the rope where it met the beam overhead. It frayed slowly, fibers snapping like brittle hair. Her breath caught, not from fear, but from the weight of it, the moment she dreamed into being but never believed would come. When the last thread broke, her arms dropped into his waiting hands. He didn't lift her, didn't cradle her. Just held her wrists with steady fingers, pressing the blanket into them like he was offering her dignity itself. "Can you walk?" he asked. She nodded again, wincing as her feet touched the earth. He supported her with a hand at her elbow, never forcing, only guiding. Her legs trembled, but she stood. They didn't speak as they left the shed, moving across the field while the world still slept. His horse stood tethered behind a bluff. Another mount stood beside it, smaller, gentler-eyed, a mule borrowed from a trapper Wade had known years back. He helped her onto the saddle. She swayed, held on, and didn't look back. They rode for hours. The prairie opened wide before them, golden in the early light, and still she said nothing. Her hands clutched the reins like they were the only thing real. Wade stayed close behind, eyes sweeping the horizon, ears tuned to every wind shift and crow call. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer pity. Only distance from the place where her voice had been stolen. By midday, they reached a cabin tucked between cottonwoods and riverbend. It leaned slightly, the roof patched with tar paper, but the hearth inside was dry, and the well still ran clear. Wade dismounted and helped her down. She stood for a long moment, staring at the door. "This place yours?" she asked, voice hoarse. He shook his head. "Was a friend's. He don't need it no more." She nodded, stepped inside. The air smelled of cedar smoke and forgotten books. She sat slowly on a bench near the hearth and stared at the stone floor like it might vanish if she blinked. Wade built a fire. Its crackle filled the silence. He set a kettle to boil, tore bread in half, and handed it to her. She chewed slowly, eyes glassy. "Name's May," she said finally. He looked over and nodded. "I know." She let out a soft laugh, almost bitter. "Of course you do. Whole damn town's talked about me for months." He didn't answer, just poked at the fire, then sat across from her. "You gonna ask who the father is?" she said. "No." She looked up. "Why not?" "Don't matter." Her lips parted slightly, then closed. She chewed another bite. The warmth of the fire began to reach her fingers. That night, while she slept, curled in the bed under quilts too thin for the season, Wade sat on the porch, watching the moon carve light across the grass. He didn't know why he'd done it, why he'd come back, why her voice in the shed had pierced something he'd long buried. But he also didn't need to know. Sometimes a man just acts, and lets the reason catch up later. 2 nights passed, then 4. She grew stronger. She walked to the creek with a wash basin, braided her hair, peeled potatoes when he cooked. She still flinched at loud sounds and looked over her shoulder when birds cried sharply, but there were moments when her face softened. One evening, as the sky turned lavender, she came to sit beside him on the porch. "My stepmother will come," she said quietly. "She won't let it lie. Not when she thinks I made her look weak." He nodded. "Let her come." "You don't know her." He looked at her steady. "You do, and you still left." The words hung there warm and quiet. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. 3 days later, Delilah arrived, as promised, not alone. A man rode beside her, star pinned to his vest, the weight of town judgment in the set of his jaw. May stood in front of the cabin before Wade could say a word. She wore a plain cotton dress, hair tied back, hands folded low over her belly. Her chin didn't shake. Delilah dismounted, fury sharp on her tongue. "You've brought shame to our name, girl. And you," she turned to Wade, "have taken something that wasn't yours." Wade stepped forward, but May held out a hand. "She didn't take me," May said. Her voice rang steady. "She left me. There's a difference." The deputy looked between them, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. He saw the bruises on May's wrists, the way her feet were braced like roots. He turned to Delilah. "Ma'am, I think the lady here has the right to decide where she stays." Delilah hissed, an ugly sound, but she didn't fight it. She mounted her horse with a final glare and turned back toward the road. May watched her go, without a word. That night, the storm came. Wind howled through the trees, thunder crawling down the mountain, like a warning. May's labor started just before midnight, and it came hard. Wade stayed at her side, jaw clenched, hand steady. She gripped his arm until her nails broke skin. He brought her water, held a lantern, spoke softly through every wave. The child arrived just after dawn, slick with heat and light, and something holy. A girl. Small, loud, perfect. May held her close, tears streaking her face. Wade crouched beside her, not touching, only watching. "What'll you name her?" he asked. May looked down, smiled. "Hope." Outside, the rain began to ease, and the sun touched the wet leaves like a blessing. Inside, May leaned back against the pillows, eyes full of something fierce and calm. "She's gonna know she's wanted," she whispered, "from the very beginning." Wade nodded, and though he said nothing, he stayed beside them until the fire burned low and the morning birds began to sing.